time, I would like to invite LA County Fire Department Battalion Chief, retired Bobby Bangar, to share some of his insights on Tom's life.
Good morning. I wish I had his talent. Good morning. A fireman knocked at the heavenly gate, his face and body scarred and old. He stood before the man of fate for admission to the fold. What have you done, St. Peter said, to gain admission here? I've been a firefighter, sir, for many, many years. The pearly gates swung wide open. As St. Peter rang the bell, he said, "Come in, son, and choose your heart. You've seen your share of hell." As Gary said, I'm Bobby Bangar. Worked with Tom for a few years, retired as a battalion chief with the LA County Fire Department. We are here today to celebrate Tom's life. If you read the obituary, and the pastor touched on it quite a bit, that Jerry so eloquently wrote, you can see Tom had a very fulfilling life. This morning I am going to touch on Tom's fire department career and the time I spent with him. Though it was short, only 20 months that I served under him with the Azusa Fire Department, our friendship continued. Prior to getting hired, a little history here. Prior to getting hired by Azusa Fire Department in 1981, I was hired by LA County Fire as a hot shot crew member. An 18-year-old kid with a dream and determination. In 1978, I was hired by the city of San Marino. 6 months later, I was released along with 3 other firefighters because of decreased funding caused by Proposition 13. I returned to being a hotshot in July of 1980. I returned to being a hotshot in July of 1981. Azusa offered me a job as a firefighter. I told my superintendent at the time I was going to turn down the Azusa offer. Azusa was a one-station town, just like San Marino was, that I got hired in 1978, that got released. I told my superintendent I was going to wait for LA County Fire. So, he took me by my earlobe, literally, and dragged me into his office. And explained to me the reasons why I was going to accept the job with Azusa. His number one comment was, "Are you stupid?" His number 2 reason was because manning a hose line on a fire engine is better than swinging a Pulaski on a fire, the Pulaski being an axe-type tool. And number 3 was the smaller foothill cities in the San Gabriel Valley at some point in time would become LA County Fire. So, by the stroke of divine intervention, I met Talbott. Excuse me. Or shall I say, Captain Talbott, sir, in August of 1981. I knew this was going to happen. I arrived at Azusa Fire Station 51 at 4:45 p.m. on my first shift. All my gear, bedding, and 2 dozen donuts. And a pit in my stomach the size of a basketball. I made the morning coffee, raised the flag, laid out the morning papers on the kitchen table. Tom's words were, with that smile of his, said, "We may have to keep this one." Jerry described Tom as being humble, generous, and kind, and classy, handsome, and charming. And he was. To me, Tom was confident, competitive, had patience and tolerance, dedication, and uncommon courage. And the ability to, like I said, Tom was a competitive man, even if he was not the one being the competitive sport. We'll get to that. The first few months was on-the-job training at Station 51, which had a 4-story drill tower. We would do our hose lays, ladder drills, power equipment, etc., in a big parking lot, which we called the grinder. Like I said, Tom liked competition. So, with a stopwatch around his neck, the games began. On Engine 51, there was a 200-foot pre-connected rubber line cotton hose with a very large plate pipe nozzle attached to it. The object of the game was to see who could extend it the fastest, myself or Terry Holden, a fellow firefighter on my shift. Now, Terry was a little shorter than I, but was built like a fire plug. I was strong, but not Terry strong. He would edge me out by 1 or 2 seconds at the beginning. Then we would move to climbing the stairs of the tower in full turnout gear and a BA bottle on her. And the object was to who was going to do it the fastest and who was going to be the first one to puke. Because we did this over and over. In the early part of 1980, I had a mishap jumping from a helicopter on a fire. I ended up having reconstruction surgery of my right knee, tearing my ACL and PCL. I was on light duty after surgery for 8 months. 4 months later, I got hired by Azusa. Well, my right knee was swollen to the size of a softball after these daily morning and afternoon trainings out of a grinder. I confided in Dave Eller, another firefighter on our shift, to help me out. After morning drills, I would disappear up into the locker room and sat in one of the stalls. Dave would bring me bags of ice, and I would sit there for an hour and ice my knees. Tom would ask me, "Bobby," or excuse me, probationary firefighter Bangar, "Where do you always go at lunchtime?" And I told him I was upstairs studying. Which brings us to Tom's airplane, a Cessna 172 he kept at Brackett Airport. Tom had asked me if I wanted to fly with him to Palm Springs. This was after I had successfully passed probation. We had breakfast at Norm's Hangar restaurant there at the airport. It was a beautiful, clear day with a mild Santa Ana wind. So as we were flying through the Banning Pass, the wind increased a lot. Tom tells me, "Bobby, be my second set of eyes." Flying through the pass, everything sort of condensed down. So he goes, "Look out for other airplanes and flying objects." After about 5 minutes, I looked at Tom and said, "Tom, the only plane I see is the tail of our plane." Tom laughs and says, "Well, Bobby, we're crabbing." The plane might have been crabbing. That meant we were going into the wind. We weren't flying straight. We were flying like this. So looking out that window, I could see the tail. So that was crabbing. I had never been in a private small airplane like that before in my life. So if the plane was crabbing, I was doing something else. On the return flight back to Brackett, it wasn't as bad. We were talking. Tom said, Bobby, I don't know how you did it. And I said, did what? He said, getting through those training days with that knee of yours. I never said a word about it. I've talked to Dave about it through the years. Dave goes, oh, I never told him because my lips were sealed. And to this day, I still don't know how he knew about that knee other than maybe he saw the swelling and the ace bandage wraps through my pants. Tom always cared. Tom always cared about his whole crew. And some of us are here today. Another real quick airplane story. And this is the type of person Tom was. Tina, my wife now, but not at the time. We went to breakfast again at Norm's restaurant with Tom and helped him wash his plane. Tina was looking for drying towels. Tom goes, Tina, there's only one way to dry a plane. He goes, get in. So we got in and off we went, flying around. Tom always had a quiet confidence about him. And always like to have fun with others and to show others fun. To the grinder again, ladder day. There's Tom with his stopwatch. Object was to see how fast I could throw the one-man 24 extension ladder and extend the fly. I know some of this terminology to some of you is hieroglyphics, but ask me after and I can explain. I was doing really good, even beating Terry's times. Then it happened. At the second time I threw that ladder and went to extend the fly to the upper portion. It would not budge. I was pulling so hard on that rope that I thought I was going to break it. And then it occurred to me as I was looking up at the ladder that I had it upside down. Tom said, geez, I didn't know you were going to try to ladder the basement. My response was, hey, it's training. I will never do that again. This comes from firefighter Eddie Vasquez, who's at our firefighter table over there. One of his little things on Tom. One morning, his engineer calls Ed, Terry Kendrick, and says, hey, call in and take the day off and let's go play golf. He goes, I just called in and spoke to Tom and took the day off. This was like at 6:30 in the morning. Tom was going to go off that shift at 8 o'clock to this incoming shift. So Ed calls in. Tom answers the phone. And Ed requests a sick day. Tom said, okay, we can cover it. So Ed is running late and rushing to get to the first tee. He gets there, and guess who he sees sitting on the bench, putting his golf shoes on? Tom. With a lump in his throat, Ed says, good morning. Tom says, you must be feeling better, Ed. And Eddie replies, well, I talked to my doctor. And he said that I need a good day of fresh air. They all hit their shots, and Tom turns towards Ed with that smile and says, let's have a nice day, Ed. Tom, the fireman's fire. The push to go LA County started in 1982, and actually before that, it really started with the big push in beginning of 1982. At that time, we did not have a favorable city council that wanted to go to LA County. So it was going to go to the vote of the people in Azusa. We were also backing pro-county candidates for the city council that would help South if they won. So off-duty fire personnel, their wives, and citizens from the community that wanted to go LA County were going door to door to pass the information along how being entered into the county fire was a good move for the city of Azusa. Tom would not let me work the streets as a probationary firefighter. With all the small town politics, he said he did not want any repercussions to come my way. There were a few high-ranking individuals on the fire department and within city government that were against the annexation. Again, Tom was protecting me. After the election, our pro-county candidates won positions on the city council, and eventually we were annexed into the LA County Fire Department. On March 1st, 1983, Azusa became part of the LA County Fire Department. 26 former Azusa Fire Department personnel were split up and sent to other LA County stations, which for us, that's a big thing. Here you are in a one-station town, now you're going to a department that had at the time about 125, and today they're well over 180. So to be split up from your crews, go to another crew, I will guarantee you every one of us that went had that pit the size of a basketball walking into those new stations. The old adage was, and the inside joke was, well, when Azusa took over the county, we were going to show them how it was done. Tom went to Fire Station 27 in the city of Commerce. I volunteered for the paramedic program. After completing 6 months of didactic and clinical training, I was sent to Fire Station 163 in the city of Belle Petite and Maywood, a neighboring city to the city of Commerce. Our paths crossed many times on emergency calls because we were on the same shift. Then Tom transferred to Fire Station 44s in the city of Peoria. And then after that, he transferred to Fire Station 97s in Azusa Glendora border, where he spent the last 5 years of his career. The last time I saw Tom was 5 to 6 years ago. We met for breakfast at Kickback Jack's in Rancho Cucamonga. We sat there for 2.5 hours and talked. We talked about our wonderful lives, our children, our ailments, and reminisced about our fire department days. The brotherhood was well alive that day. One thing Tom would always say, don't let the call determine your attitude. I use that phrase more than hundreds of times in my 37-year career as a captain and a chief officer. So with that, I leave you with, firefighters never die. They just burn forever in the hearts of loved ones and the people they save.
Thank you.